Thank you, John and Helen. Today we're looking at different types of entertainment, and my focus will be on visual and performing arts. And with me today is the creative powerhouse that is Ugoma Adegoke. Ugoma is a creative entrepreneur, art and cultural curator, community builder, economist, and financial professional. She's the founder of design brand Zebra Leavin. She's also the director and chief curator of Bloom Art, festival director of Film Festival, Lights Camera Africa, and the creator of Women Rising, a music concert and arts weekender. Welcome, Ugoma.
Thank you, girl.
Right. So awesome to have you here with me
really
today. You know, this is really cool. So let's delve right in. And to kick us off, I would like to ask you a very quick question. Can you tell us what visual and performing arts entertainment means to you?
Well, visual and performing arts entertainment to me, I guess means what it means, nominally. Visual art, performing arts for me is a visual art because anything that is created that the eyes behold is a form of visual art.
Exactly.
But of course, in terms of performing or theater arts, you're more including a live performance, actors, etc., as well as a live audience. That's the sort of only difference. Visual arts can succeed and exist without there being live viewers, as well as live givers of the arts. But all are part of the arts.
Yes, they are.
And all are part of the arts as they relate to the softer sides of us that that are essential, that are absolutely essential. And of course, I find that entertaining or being entertained by wholesome things is sort of an essential human need. And so that's what visual and performing, or the arts in general, mean to me, and why they entertain me.
When you say it's a wholesome human need, what do you mean?
I mean it in, I guess, the most holistic of ways. Creating expressions that are abstract, or creating expressions that are open to interpretation, that are meant to inspire, meant to question, interrogate, all the gamut of things that arts and creating of arts is meant for, which really usually the artist and whoever the creator is the person who first decides, but the second person to decide what a creative process or act is the receiver. And how you receive is so varied. It's as varied as your skin being, darker than mine, or your height being different to mine. How we receive, the things that are given out in the process of creativity are very different. And that's why I mean wholesome, because I think it's probably the most honest thing that we do as human beings, to create. And I think it's one of the most vulnerable things we can do as human beings, to create. And it's one of the most honorable things to also receive a creation. It's just before this call, I was actually just before this interview, I was on a call with one of the artists who I work with, just about the style in which I like to present art. It's about giving you art, which you then purchase and have in your home, etc. But it's also about respecting the deep intimacy and purpose that went into that creation, whether it's a photograph, whether it's a painting, whether it's a performance on stage.
Yes.
It's painstaking work, it's serious work, and my job entails teaching the receivership as well, to honor that. As well as creating environment for the creative process to be free and unhindered. I also, in the same vein, must educate the receivership to understand how important it is to create.
Okay, so I'm going to, you've said some really succinct things, so I'm going to segue, and I'm going to ask you to simplify for the average person who doesn't necessarily understand what it entails to be a creator and a receiver for the specific purpose of economic growth in terms of being a real source of revenue.
So you mentioned my economist past. It's my past because I no longer work as that. But if you think about the demand and supply of anything, the two must work together for there to be a market. You create, I receive, we agree on some kind of midway. It could be a financial number. It could even be a nod. It's his acknowledgement that something has happened. Some process has been recognized. It's been valued, and we decide that it might be money that we use as exchange. It might just be even a press reference, right? So the creators and the receivers are two sides of the coin, the same coin, right? And in terms of the context of economic growth, the demand and supply must meet for there to be growth. A creator must create, and a receiver must appreciate the creativity and decide that it's worth either a financial value or even a nominal value for there to be economics. And it's very simple, but it seems very complicated, especially in a country like ours and an environment like ours that has become harder and harder and harder over the years, where we have focused a lot on sustenance, for obvious reasons, but I always argue that sustenance is important, and commerce is important, but the nuance and the power in creativity and what it does for our well-being, what it does for our sense of independence or even identity, especially as Nigerians, is invaluable. It cannot be underemphasized, and you need it for the complete whole individual. You need to be astute in business and the transactional side of life. You also need to be astute in the emotional intelligence and that side of us, that softer side. And that's what the arts really demand, whether you're a maker or whether you're a receiver.
Okay, so thank you so much for that. You're known as a creative entrepreneur because you're literally in the space where you're, like you've said, you're influencing creation, and you're also having the conversations with the people who receive the creations in the different formats. You do a gamut of different things within the creative space. If my child came to me and said to me, I want to become a creative, and that is how I want to earn my income and my sustenance, what do I say to my child? Because I've grown up in a world where it's like, you're creative, you're going to be poor now. Do you understand? So how do you then defend that child?
First of all, I'll tell your child, come and work with Auntie Ugoma for a bit first, because interning and shadowing professionals in the field is so important, because a lot of things that look sexy from the outside, which are not sexy on the inside. There's a lot of I can't overemphasize how much of a job it is. But I think anything worth doing, as long as you have identified it as your passion, is worth doing completely. The key is to gain knowledge. So that's the first thing, is you must gain knowledge. Sometimes you can gain that formally through an institution. I'm self-taught, for example. My degrees are in economics. I have a master's degree in economics, but I'm technically not using that. Although I would also argue that I am, because
it plays a role.
The idea of the creative entrepreneurship means that I have a creative side. In my unique circumstance, I have a creative side, which I've identified I want to focus in the visual arts. And I also have a personality that I realized also had an influence, an enabling factor for my craft and my talent, which I then use to augment what I can do with the creativity. And after 13 or 14 years, after the first tantrum my father threw when I decided I was starting a fashion label and leaving my job, of course, because he was convinced that I was a lunatic and I was going to basically embarrass him and the whole family to become a tailor. Even just understanding that a fashion designer and a tailor are not the same. So, I'm going round to that child. I would say, first of all, what do you want to do? Which part? Do you want to be a gaffer? Do you want to be a director of photography? Do you want to be a pattern maker? Do you want to be a fashion designer? Do you want to be a fashion retailer? Do you want to be an artist? Do you want to be a painter? Do you want to be a sculptor? Do you want to be a performing artist? Do you want to be a filmmaker? What kind of films do you want to make? Do you want to be a documentary filmmaker? And I think the first way to figure out what that would be to obviously shadow somebody or even just be observant. But like with anything, you banker, cobbler, you must focus. You enter into a space and you drill in. And I've always believed in this concept of facing forward. You must commit completely. There's a very interesting quote that Professor Chike Anyako said to me once in a conversation. He's a professor of art at the University of Calabar. And he said, you must die on the cross of your art. He was referring to the artist. But it was such a visceral and scary thing. But he meant it, and it's true. You must die on the cross of your art, your vocation.
So what do you tell the parent who, like your father, thought you were a lunatic?
The polite version? To be very honest, what you tell a parent is you must support and enable your child on their journey, not yours. Yes. Protection is important, okay? But you can also destroy the thing you love by caging it. And I think that's something that all our parents struggle with. And of course, they all want us to succeed. In my case, it turned out pretty okay. So my parents are very happy and very proud, and everything that I'm on, they want to put on the coffee table. But I was also very stubborn. It wasn't pretty. So it's always, hindsight is 20/20.
Yes.
But I was convinced that this was the thing I had to do. Yes. You know, and I had the skills and I had the access to stay in a finance job.
Yes.
I still was being recruited like 3 or 4 years after I'd even had, stopped gaining skills in the finance world. But I think that you must decide what you want for your life. I think you must also decide what matters to you, even as you're earning money.
And then you must have an enabling environment in your parents.
It's ideal to have an enabling environment to your parents. But I think the ultimate enabling environment that we must learn to create is the enabling environment within yourself. Because there are people, what are people who don't have parents?
Very true.
What are people whose parents are, indisposed?
Very true.
There must be, and what is a parent? A parent is a guide. So I believe in the village model. You decide and choose who your village would be. You are part of my village, but we're not related by blood.
True.
I have mentors who are parent figures,
yes.
even though I have 2 living supportive parents. So
yes.
you can use those people as proxies to criticize you when you need to be criticized, because it's not everything you're good at.
Yes.
And it's only someone that really loves you that will tell you, well, you know what, you're quite disorganized, maybe you should do this. Or maybe you should build up your organizational skills so you can be a more effective X or Y. That kind of feedback can only be received when you're dealing with a member of your village who truly wants you to succeed.
Yes, I fully understand that. So to that, I'd like to know, is there a connection between visual and performing arts, our emotions, and our values as Africans?
Yes. The very simple answer is yes. And I think I've touched on that throughout my conversation,
yes,
because I'm one of the... I like to consider myself a purist because...
What is a purist?
As far as the arts are concerned, and this is my colleagues and people who know me, who do business with me, the artists I work with will know, for me, it's very personal. The idea that it's not personal, it's business, which is a common quote that you will hear as we're all, sort of traversing our lives and our existence, is that it's not personal, it's business.
Yes.
I disagree. It's never business, it's personal.
100%
and
agree.
The entire value chain that takes you from making art to understanding it, to receiving it, to even loving it, to then valuing it and placing real value, which, for economy to work is a financial value.
Yes.
But in addition to financial value, what the first point of contact with art is an emotional one. So of course it affects us constantly. It can affect us for good. It can affect us for bad. It can change our emotions. It can redirect mindsets. So it's integral. I don't like the idea of Africans because I feel like we're all individual. A Nigerian and a Ghanaian and a person from Sudan have very specific geographical and cultural and ethnographic influences, but the human race, which is what I'll replace with the African, is that yes, the performing arts, the visual arts, all manner of creating and expression of very subliminal emotions is essential to every human being. And the challenge for me, to anyone who would argue, is that you have an immersion into whatever form of art, whether it's music, film, paintings, and remove it from your life and tell me which version of your life you prefer. It's usually nice and easy to just cast things off. It's bougie, it's for the rich, it's for this, but no, it's not true. And you can access art at any level.
Yes.
You really can. And of course, the job on our part as creative entrepreneurs and advocates in the space is to let people understand that they can. Also to break down some of those walls that have been put up.
Yes.
But there are so many things you can also achieve, even with those walls still up. It's about imagination and being resourceful and being very creative about how you want to consume and access.
And doing the work.
You do, but we must do the work.
Yeah.
To eat, we must do the work.
Yeah.
To move from here to there, I need to get up and walk. So in everything, there's no task we have as human beings that doesn't require us to put in effort.
Yes. Yes.
So
it's very true, and it's very deep what you've said. And like you said, throughout the course of this conversation thus far, you have talked about the wellness element and the emotional connections, and it is very, very true. So here's the thing: there's this impression that being a creative means you're disorganized, flighty, scattered, temperamental, emotionally charged, difficult to work with. Is this correct?
This is, you know what? I don't think it's a baseless assumption. Like with everything, with generalizations, there will always be anomalies who are not. I know many artists that are that, right? I would also argue that even I'm not an artist, I'm also a creator and a maker. So to some extent, some of those characteristics exist. They exist when you are essentially using your emotions to go through life. But the thing is that we have demonized emotionality in the world, in particular in our cultures, local cultures. Women get the worst of this because we're flighty and we're emotional. Serena is emotional. When she slams her racket down, she's mad.
Yeah.
The man is not.
Yeah.
So there's so many subliminal messages there, which I think come from prejudice. I would say that, yes, the cross that an artist has to bear, whoever he is, a director of a play that essentially changed your entire life, and he spent 1 year writing that script. He went to the bush to think. There's a lot of sacrifice, okay, when you think about the back end. There's a lot of sacrifice that true art requires. So I think it is fair to cut them some slack for why they're on the edge, super emotional, because that frequency is why they receive the messages you want to receive. And whether you want to believe in any particular form of religion or even spirituality, there's no doubt that there are spiritual elements of being an individual who is on a plane that is the plane of the artist. The plane of the artist is sort of akin to oracle or medium, okay? So they're the middle. They're transcending messages for us, the music that calms us, the visuals that elevate us, the poetry that makes you understand something that you didn't understand before you read it, right? But we don't often ascribe those kinds of elevated status to the artist, and we don't anymore. In the 60s we did, which is why you didn't have national conversations. In fact, your dad will agree, you did not have conversations without involving these people. You
Yes,
cannot have any
very
national
true,
conversation
very
without calling the writers, the poets. It's impossible.
Very
When
true.
Nigeria became independent, the core of conversations about direction and our national identity was not led by politicians, because they're not the visionaries. Visionary is a specific word, the visionaries, and artists are visionaries.
Wow.
So yes, they are mad. We are all mad, but for a reason. And we have a cross. There's a cross to carry, and that cross is for everybody else. The cross that they carry is for the common good. So yeah, a bit scatty, a bit emotional, but it's okay, because we also have art managers like me who will buffer you
Yes.
and shield you from the hard world, which doesn't yet realize it needs you, because it doesn't yet know how to engage with you. So before the hard world crushes the artist, we have to be in the middle, so that that art can be created and produced and sent out into the world. And maybe it gives you some time to come around, knowing that you do need this art as much as you need your skill that earns you a living.
Thank you so much. You know, that has been, Ugoma, it's always a pleasure talking to you. It always is. And we have, I think, covered a lot of ground in this very short time. So very, very, very quickly, please, I want you to please give me 3 pieces of advice you would give anybody that wants to go into this space. Very, very quickly.
Figure out your why you're doing it. Figure out that. Learn. Learn, learn, learn. And even though you're traversing a vocation that requires you to be personal and emotional, do not take the hard knocks personally. Don't take them personally.
Don't
So
take it
that's the thing,
personally.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's really very useful, because we all need to understand that entertainment in all its forms can, like Obiasika said last week, create millions and millions and millions of jobs.
Oh, yes.
And change our economy.
For sure.
So thank you so much for that. It's been great. It's been really great. I'm so thankful that you were here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank
it's a pleasure.
Right, so in a few minutes, John and myself and Helen will be wrapping up the show. We've changed the things around a little, so we'll be wrapping up the show in a few minutes. Thank you.